what I'm really trying to do is give you some realistic understanding of what antibiotic resistance in cattle in internal parasites is. First of all, we have to define the fact that resistance starts out with a population of parasites that are susceptible to the drug at the dose rate, to the stage initially. When resistance begins, we begin to see a selection of some pre-existing individuals in that population that were susceptible to the antiparasitic that are no longer susceptible. The resistance may be based on altered active binding site, on where the drug binds. It could be on some sink protein that's sucking up the drug that comes into the parasite. Could be some sort of activated detoxification system, or it could be some behavioral event. We talk about resistance or reduced efficacy, and we tend to focus on the products that are used. But the reality is, we need to focus on a whole lot of factors, which may be much more important than the product. First of all, we got the parasite, then we've got the product, then we've got the host genetic system and the immunity that we just talked about, and we've got stressors on the host, then we've got environmental issues to get involved, and then we've got management issues that are so important in efficacy, and then we've got evaluation techniques. So I'm going to walk through those quickly. The parasite. First of all, we have 5 stages of each parasite. We have eggs, we have L1s, L2s, L3s, L4s, inhibited L4s, and adults. Each one of those stages would have a different efficacy pattern. The L3s are quite susceptible. The adults are reasonably susceptible to drug treatment. The L4s, a little worse. The inhibited L4s are really hard to get. So when we talk about efficacy, what are we talking about? On what stage? And how much percentage are we getting on this stage versus that stage when we dose an animal? Different species have different responses to antibiotics. The lungworms and the homunculus are very, very susceptible to macrocyclic lactones. Cuperia, pretty hard to get really full efficacy. 80% efficacy against Cuperia is really about what you could expect. The Manadiris, you don't hardly touch them with a macrocyclic lactone. On the other hand, let's take levamisole. They don't even touch inhibited L4s at all. In fact, they even have difficulty with non-inhibited L4s. And you may get only if you're treating with a benzimidazole or a levamisole, you'll only get about 30% efficacy against deeply inhibited L4s in cattle. Very well. Okay, now we got these molecules. The levamisole and that class of compounds are very active against adults, a little less active against L4s, don't touch inhibited to speak of. The mode of action is very rapid. It's on the nervous system. It's a very water-soluble compound. It's in the body, out of the body, 12 hours of efficacy. Okay, if we expect it to have more efficacy, longer period of time, we're doing a disservice to that class of water-soluble compounds. The benzimidazoles, they're less water-soluble, so they get L4s well. They get inhibited L4s between 90 and 30%, depending on how deep the inhibition is. In the southern U.S., in the summertime, you'll get 30%. In the northern U.S., in the summertime, you get 100%. So you have to be aware of that as a limitation of that class of compounds. And you get adults, and you get some egg activity with the benzimidazoles. Their mode of action is microtubule inhibition, 36 hours of efficacy. Now, the macrocyclic lactones are very insoluble in water, very fat-soluble molecules. They're big things. They have activity against L3s, L4s, inhibited L4s, adults. Their mode of action on the nervous system, not the same part of the nervous system as levamisole. But they have from 1 to 5 weeks of activity, depending on the parasite and the conditions of the challenge. Also, we've got carrier issues in are products. An oral product, if you treat an animal that has a full abomasum, it's full of food, you reduce the amount of drug that's absorbed by 30%. If you fast it for 12 to 24 hours, you get a boost of 30% more product in the animal. The injectables, we have to be real careful when we talk about injectables, because are we going sub-Q? Are we going IM? Are we going IV? IV can be very toxic. If you're trying to do a subcutaneous product and you hit IM, it could be very damaging to the muscle and get hung up in the muscle. These are issues we have to be aware of. Porons. Oh my goodness, porons. Dirt on the hair. Long hair, cold weather, licking. We got all kinds of ways we can change the amount of product available to that animal. And we may call that resistance or lack of efficacy. In fact, it's just simply a physical barrier issue. Oxidative-free excipients for products with unstable oxidative molecules. This is one of our problems for macrocyclic lactones. If you have oxygen in that bottle, there is a bond between position 22 and 23 on that molecule that cleaves very easily. Now, we could have oxygen because we don't have real pure excipients. We could have oxygen because we use part of the bottle and we've been bouncing it around in our truck for a while. We can have oxygen for a lot of reasons, but it will inactivate the molecule. Okay, what about the hosts? My goodness, they're going to have an impact on the efficacy, because really when we talk about efficacy, we're talking about the product interacting with the immune system to really get full efficacy. Now, if we're looking at different species, of course, goats, their immune system for internal parasites are useless. In fact, we should never actually graze a goat. They're born browsers. They're not geared to be good animals to put to graze and pick up larvae and kill those larvae with the immune system. They also have another issue, and that is the fact that because they are born browsers, they have very, very active metabolic enzymes in their liver, and they'll chew up drugs. You gotta, if you give me, and we made this mistake for years and years. I've been in this business for 40 years, and we've been doing it for 40 years. Here we get a sheep registration and we put it in goats. Okay, let's say it's at 100 in sheep. It needs to be 150 or 200 in goats to get the same effect. And yet, we put goat on the label. Cattle, they have the best immune system of those three species. Also, there's sex issues. Male animals, especially intact males, have the worst immune systems in terms of parasite control. And then there's steers, there's cows, there's yearlings, and breeds. Dairy breeds are the worst, through English up to something with an ear and a hump, and in age. Calves are very susceptible. I mean, I have very weak immune systems. Yearlings a little better, and adults a very strong immune system. Okay, what about other stressors in the system? Because we're talking about immune information, we're talking about transport information, we're talking about metabolism information. We have all kinds of stressors that affect those things. Calving. I mean, a cow will go from an egg count of 5 to an egg count of 30 when she drops a calf. She didn't get more parasites, but her immune system dropped and allowed the parasites in her to shed eggs. Viral infections. We have the same immune system working with viruses that work against parasites, internal parasites. If we have a viral infection, we're fighting for the energy. Steroid implants, heat stress, cold stress, and the cold stress could be on the animal or it could be on the product. could be poor syringeability, could be poor absorption. Heavy parasite infections. We cannot control parasites under very high challenge the way we can under a lower challenge. And inadequate nutrition. I mean, that's the driving force for the immune system. That's the driving force for the growth. That's going to impact the effect. Skip this one. Okay, management. Whew. Here we go. Now, probably the number one thing is we don't weigh our animals before we dose them. So we don't dose to the right amount. We're either underdosing, we're overdosing, we don't know what we're doing. And we say this product didn't work. Well, maybe I underdosed that animal by 30%. Why wouldn't it work? Of course it's not going to work in the way it should. Stocking densities. I mean, they're going to get heavy stocking densities. The animals are going to get infected more rapidly. You may look at a fecal egg count reduction that comes up very quickly after the treatment because they're reinfected. Rotational grazing. That's an excellent way of doing things, is to put on older hosts before you, to kind of suck up the parasites before you put on younger hosts. The refugia, that's something that's come up really big in this FDA report recently. It's basically talking about having a susceptible population of parasites put on the pasture so that they can kind of drown out the effect of the resistant parasites on the pasture. That's, to me, that's a red herring, and I'll get back to that in the last slide. Proper nutrition. Without proper nutrition, we don't get good efficacy and we don't get good growth. Animals missing the chute, we all know about that, but that's probably pretty minor. Good records. Oh my, if we want to really evaluate our parasite control programs, we have to keep good records of how they're growing, or what the calving rates are, or what the calving weights are, or whatever it is that we're going to use as a parameter to evaluate, did we get a good parasite control this year? Last year, was it better or was it worse? What did we change in the meantime? We have to have that information, and that is so key. Record keeping is really key, because we'll talk about my recommendations for how to look for whether the product worked or not. FDA guidelines, they've recently talked about harrowing pastures. That's a good idea if you have hot, dry weather and you have no animals on the pasture. Don't do it if you have animals still on the pasture and you have moist weather. You're just going to get yourself in a worse place. And they don't put that in those guidelines. Evaluation techniques. Now in sheep and goats we have this FAMACHA technique, which because Haemophilus is a bloodsucker, the eyes turn white when an animal is really sick. And you can know which animals to treat and which animals you don't have to treat. That's wonderful. We don't have that in cattle. We have fecal egg count reduction. Fecal egg count reduction is not a quantitative test. It is a qualitative test. The parasites are there or they're not there. That's all it's telling you. Because you can't measure L4s, you can't measure L3s, you can't measure inhibited L4s, you can't measure probably 2/3 of your parasites in the animal with a fecal egg count. Weight gains. That's what I use as my primary measurement of parasite control. End of story. Body conditioning scores, calving rates, calving weights. Yeah, it's good, they're helpful, but there's so many other variables in developing those particular scores that it's very, very hard. Now, here's the problem. We have no idea what the extent of antibiotic resistance in cattle in the U.S. is. I have been working this field for 40 years. The truth of the matter is I have 3 documented cases of cattle parasite-resistant properties, internal parasite-resistant properties. And I can tell you where they are. But there is nothing else in the literature that tells me what our problem is in the United States. We need a treatment and a timing and efficacy for these products really done well. Now, we always hope and we always look forward to new technologies that are coming along that are going to help us with some of these things. But in the meantime, what we need is to be able to make sure we understand what resistance is, what causes it, and we need to understand how to quantitatively evaluate it in cattle in this country. Thank you very much.